Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching The World Report. Let's first take a look at the headlines. A passenger plane carrying 67 people has crashed in Kazakhstan, likely killing dozens. Preliminary information coming from the wreckage suggests that at least 25 people have survived, with up to 42 fatalities. The flight was intended for Grozny in Russia from Baku. Syria's new leaders have dissolved rebel factions, merging them under the Defence Ministry. Meanwhile, protests have broken out after a Christmas tree was burned in central Syria. Japan's foreign minister has met with his Chinese counterpart in Beijing. Among the topics being discussed was seafood trade, considering an ongoing ban from China due to the release of radioactive waste into the ocean being a key point on the agenda. As deadly strikes continue to batter the Gaza Strip, reports of hospital patients being forced to move have surfaced. Injured people have made the mile-long journey to another hospital on foot, according to the territory's health ministry. Russian missiles have targeted Ukraine's energy infrastructure in a major attack. Cruise and ballistic missiles have been used with civilian injuries reported in Kharkiv. At least 21 people have been killed after a controversial election in Mozambique. Deadly clashes broke out after the nation's top courts confirmed the governing Frelimo party's victory in the disputed election. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has defied a second summons over his short-lived martial law declaration. Following public and political outcry, Yoon has been stripped of his duties while remaining in post during a probe. Tensions have reached a boiling point in Mozambique, where violent protests have erupted following the confirmation of Frelimo's controversial victory in the country's recent elections. At least 21 people have been killed, including 2 police officers, and hundreds more have been injured. With security forces clashing with demonstrators demanding justice, the situation remains dire.
At least 21 people have been killed in ongoing unrest in Mozambique, following the confirmation of Frelimo's victory in the country's disputed elections. Among the deceased are 2 police officers, while 236 violent incidents have been reported since Monday. Additionally, 25 people, including 13 police officers, have been wounded. The protests erupted after the Constitutional Council confirmed Frelimo's victory in the October 9th elections. Opposition groups and protesters have alleged that the elections were rigged. In response, security measures have been ramped up, with 78 people arrested, and the armed forces have been deployed to critical areas across the nation. Frelimo has denied vote-rigging accusations. After Daniel Chapo's victory, opposition leader Venancio Mondlane urged supporters to prepare for tough times ahead, expressing confidence in their cause.
Em Moçambique, o Conselho Constitucional é legal, mas essa legalidade de legalizar o roubo, de legalizar a fraude, de legalizar a humilhação do próprio povo. Então, meus amigos, aqui está. Chegou a hora. Acho que a hora já chegou. Acho que a hora já chegou.
The protests have seen demonstrators burning tires, blocking roads and vandalizing public facilities, including police stations, banks and petrol stations. The unrest highlights widespread frustration with corruption and high unemployment rates in the country. Despite the violence, Mondlane remains hopeful, assuring his supporters that victory will ultimately be theirs. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now take a look at some news updates from the Indo-Pacific region. At least 46 people have died in a Pakistani bombardment of Afghanistan's Paktina province. Other than the deceased, 6 people have also been severely wounded. The Afghan Taliban government has vowed retaliation. The Afghan Defence Ministry statement condemned the strikes, calling them barbaric and a clear aggression. A senior Pakistani security official said the airstrikes targeted terrorists' hideouts across the border. Social media users in Vietnam will now need to verify their identities. This is a part of strict new internet regulations in the country. The law will compel tech companies operating in Vietnam to store user data. They will subsequently have to provide it to authorities on request. Additionally, they will have to remove content the government regards as illegal within 24 hours. Critics say that this will further undermine freedom of expression in the country. Hong Kong has offered bounties of $1 million for information leading to the arrest of 6 democracy advocates based overseas. The country has accused them of national security crimes. Authorities also said they would cancel the passports of 7 others of whom bounties had already been issued. This is the 3rd announcement where they have offered such rewards. The 2 previous rounds of bounties were in July and December last year. Tonga's parliament elected Isaac Ek as the country's new prime minister in a special session of the House. This comes after his predecessor quit earlier this month, just ahead of a no-confidence vote by lawmakers. Ek assumes office less than a year before the nation is to hold its next general election. A former finance minister, Ek won the secret ballot by 16 votes to 8, defeating the only other candidate, Trade Minister Frelimo. Bangladesh has sent a formal request to India to extradite ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. She fled to New Delhi in August amid the student-led protests that ended her 15 years in power. India's foreign ministry said it had received Bangladesh's request but didn't immediately provide details. Hasina's son questioned the process and credibility of a tribunal that is dealing with the charges against her. In Northern Gaza, Israeli forces evacuated the Indonesian Hospital, forcing patients to travel miles on foot to another facility. Amid the crisis, Christians in Gaza mark a sombre Christmas, praying for peace. While in Bethlehem, Jesus' birthplace, prayers are dedicated to victims of what many call genocide. Here is the full report on the ongoing situation within the region.
Famine Early Warning Systems Network warns of a devastating famine unfolding in northern Gaza, worsened by Israel's near-total blockade on food supplies. The agency predicts that deaths from starvation could reach catastrophic levels by next month. Amidst this, in Gaza's north, Israeli forces evacuated the Indonesian hospital, forcing patients, some on foot, to travel miles to another hospital. In Gaza, Christians observe a sorrowful Christmas, praying for peace amid the violence. Meanwhile, in Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus, prayers are dedicated to victims of what many call genocide.
هذا مش عيد، نحن بس ماخذين العود طقوس صلوات وبس، مش أكثر من صلوات وبس، يعني
نتطلع للعيد إنه يكون في أمل وفي انتهاء للحرب، بس للأسف الوضع اللي إحنا موجودين فيه ما زالت الحرب مستمرة واستمرارها بيزيد كل يوم عن يوم أقوى من أول.
Violence escalates in the occupied West Bank, where Israeli attacks on Tulkarem and Nur Shams refugee camps killed 8 Palestinians, including 2 women and a teenager. The attacks followed dawn raids that left both camps devastated. The death toll in Gaza continues to mount. In the past 24 hours alone, 21 people were killed. Meanwhile, Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati has urged the US and France to pressure Israel to cease truce violations with Hezbollah and withdraw from southern Lebanon, stressing the need for stability in the region. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now take a look at some stories from across North America. Donald Trump criticised Joe Biden for commuting 37 death row sentences to life imprisonment. He called the decision an insult to the victims' families. Trump promised to restore capital punishment after his inauguration. His focus includes violent offenders and killers. Legal experts, however, call the plan a challenge under existing laws. Trump has consistently advocated for the death penalty. The bald eagle is now the official US national bird. President Joe Biden signed a law to formalise it. Congress had overlooked the designation for years. The eagle has been a national emblem since 1782. Its image appears on seals, flags and currency. The bird symbolises strength and freedom, while it's native to North America. Hawaii crime boss Michael Misk, aged 50, has died from a fentanyl overdose in federal custody. Officials say the death was accidental but under investigation. Misk was convicted of racketeering and murder in July. He faced sentencing in January. He was found unresponsive on the 1st of December, while autopsy results could take 30 days. Drugs in prisons remain a growing concern across North America. Legendary music producer Richard Perry has died at the age of 82. He suffered a cardiac arrest in Los Angeles. Perry produced hits like You're So Vain by Carly Simon and Rod Stewart's Songbook albums. A Grammy trustee honoree, he worked across pop, R&B and country. He revived careers and created timeless classics. Perry leaves a legacy of musical excellence. 3 Oregon lawmakers propose a new bill. It blocks utilities from rate hikes if wildfire suits go unresolved for 3 years. Pacific Corp faces lawsuits over the 2020 wildfires. A federal lawsuit accuses it of negligence during the Archie Creek fire. Pacific Corp also recently gained approval for a 9.8% rate hike. Critics argue rates have risen nearly 50% since 2021. Wildfires in 2020 caused devastating loss, killing 9 and destroying thousands of homes. The FBI is offering $10,000 for help finding Jeremiah Haight, 23, who's accused of killing a 7-year-old in a Colorado reservation. The December 11th shooting occurred in Towark, the Ute Mountain Ute Reservation. Haight faces charges of murder and assault. The victim, Zamius Lang, was described as a bright and loving child. An arrest warrant was issued last week. While the FBI says the shooting targeted a residence, details remain sealed. Syria's new leaders have agreed with the country's rebel groups on their dissolution and integration into the defence ministry. Meanwhile, protests take place in Damascus over the burning of a Christmas tree. Here's the report.
Syria's interim government and other rebel organisations have agreed to disband and merge under the defence ministry. This came after a meeting with country's Delaware facto leader, Mohammed al-Jolani, and heads of several armed factions. However, the representatives of the Kurdish-led forces in Syria's northeast were not a part of meeting. Therefore, it cannot be said whether or not they will be a part of the dissolution. Meanwhile, Syrian Christians attended Mass for the first time on Christmas Eve since President Bashar al-Assad's overthrow. The pews of Lady Damascus Church in Syria's capital were filled with a mixed congregation of young and old, holding candles as hymns filled the air and echoed through the church.
يعني الأجواء مو مثل كل سنة يعني تغيرت الأجواء شوي بس نتمنى يكون الوضع الجاي أحسن والوضع بشكل عام أحسن.
Hours before the service, hundreds of demonstrators took to the streets in Christian areas of Damascus to protest the burning of a Christmas tree near Hama in central Syria. Footage on social media appeared to show masked men dousing the Christmas tree with an unidentified liquid the night before Christians in Syria prepared to celebrate Christmas Eve. It was unclear whether they were trying to put the fire out or help it spread. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the main Islamist faction which led the uprising that toppled President Bashar al-Assad, said foreign fighters had been detained over the incident. Owing to the concerns of violence, the service was held amid tight security. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now take a look at some updates from the world of business. American Airlines has resumed service after a brief outage that grounded all US flights. The delay was caused by a vendor technology issue with the airline's flight operations system. Flights began boarding at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, but delays continue. The Allied Pilots Association said the airline has backup systems to manage such disruptions. Pilots are trained to handle system outages. A US government panel has failed to decide whether Nippon Steel's $14.9 billion acquisition of US steel poses a national security threat. The Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States has referred the matter to President Joe Biden. He must act within 15 days. Biden joins a strong group of US leaders, including President-elect Donald Trump and incoming Vice President J.D. Vance, who have opposed the transaction. El Salvador's Congress has approved a bill allowing gold and metal mining, reversing a 2017 ban. The ban was put in place to protect the environment from harmful chemicals like cyanide and mercury. The move has sparked concern among environmentalists. President Nayib Bukele, popular for his crackdown on street gangs, signalled his plans to change the mining policy last month. China's Commerce Ministry has extended its anti-dumping investigation into EU brandy by 3 months. The probe, which began on January the 5th, will now conclude on April the 5th. Preliminary findings suggest that EU brandy dumping could harm China's market. The probe is seen as a retaliation for France supporting EU tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. Lilium, a German flying taxi startup, has been saved from collapse. Lilium filed for bankruptcy in October and was set to close this week without new funding. However, the company announced a breakthrough. Mobile Uplift Corporation, backed by European and North American investors, agreed to buy Lilium's assets. The deal will allow Lilium to restart its business. The company has also attracted interest from Saudi Arabia's flag carrier, Saudia, which signed a deal to purchase 50 jets earlier this year. It is a bitterly cold Christmas morning in Ukraine. As per reports, there are power cuts in several regions of the country. Strikes on power plants have been a regular occurrence in Ukraine since the start of the war. In September, President Zelensky said that 80% of Ukrainian energy infrastructure had been destroyed. Since then, there's been no let-up in the shelling. Here is a report.
Russian missiles killed at least one person and damaged energy infrastructure across Ukraine. Ukrainian authorities said it was a massive Christmas attack. Air raid sirens rang over Ukraine on Wednesday morning while the Air Force reported the launch of Russian cruise missiles from the Black Sea. Ukraine faces its toughest winter of almost 3-year war as Moscow steps up its aerial bombardment and its troops advance on the front lines in the east. In an address celebrating Christmas, here's what Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said.
Сьогодні дуже особливий вечір. Святвечір. І це наше третє Різдво у часи війни. Наша велика українська сім'я не може відзначати його повною мірою так, як хотілося б. Так, як це має бути. Не всі з нас вдома, на жаль. Не у всіх, на жаль, є дім. І не всі, на жаль.
A massive missile attack also pummeled Ukraine's northeastern city Kharkiv on early Wednesday. As per the reports, there were 7 Russian strikes and at least 3 people were injured. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from across Europe. Pope Francis launched Observation of the Globe Festival of Christmas with a sombre mass in the Vatican. This year's Christmas once again takes place under the shadow of Israel's war on Hamas and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Francis used his Christmas Eve Mass to urge Christians to think of the wars, of the machine gun children, of the bombs on schools or hospitals. French officials raised the death toll in Mayotte to 39 from 35. Earlier local authorities had said that thousands may have died in Cyclone Chido. The devastating storm hit the island about 10 days ago and the rescue operations are still ongoing. Authorities have said efforts to count the dead may be complicated by the fact that many of the deceased may have been undocumented migrants. Moldova is facing a harsh winter, but it will overcome the challenge. President Mai Sandu said at her inauguration for the second term on Tuesday. Sandu won a closely contested election in November. She faces a potential energy crisis as a threat of Russia cutting off gas supply to the nation looms. Several Serbian NGOs filed complaints against members of police. This comes following an Amnesty International report that authorities were using sophisticated digital technology to spy on journalists and activists. The report includes testimonies of an activist who accused authorities of covertly installing spyware on their device. Far-right leader Marine Le Pen said that the days of the new French government are already numbered. She predicted an early presidential election in a few months. She spoke a day after Emmanuel Macron named a new government under Francois Bayrou. France has been marred by political deadlock since Macron gambled on a snap election. The move backfired, with voters electing a parliament fractured between three rival blocs. A passenger plane from Azerbaijan Airlines has crashed near Kazakhstan's Aktau city, bursting into flames. The plane, en route from Baku to Grozny, was rerouted due to heavy fog. The flight carried 62 passengers and 5 crew members. Initial reports suggest that a few people survived the crash. Here is the full report.
A passenger plane from Azerbaijan Airlines burst into flames after crashing near Kazakhstan's Aktau city, the country's emergencies ministry confirmed. The Embraer ERJ-190 aircraft was en route from Baku, Azerbaijan, to Grozny in Russia's Chechnya region, but was rerouted due to heavy fog. The flight carried 62 passengers and 5 crew members, and initial reports indicate that a few survived the crash. Authorities confirmed that at least 32 people survived, though the number may change as rescue efforts continue. Survivors were rushed to a nearby hospital for treatment. Casualties are feared, but officials have not released a confirmed death toll. The crash site saw swift action, with 52 rescuers and 11 rescue vehicles arriving to control the situation. Fire services successfully extinguished the blaze. According to reports, the flight took off at 3:55 a.m. UTC, but was exposed to strong GPS jamming, which caused the aircraft to lose signal transmission before the crash. Investigations into the cause of the accident are underway. Kazakhstan's emergencies ministry said it is working closely with Azerbaijani authorities to gather details. Bureau Report, NewsX.
That's all we have time for. We'll be back soon with more of the latest news updates from across the world.